Welcome, everyone, to the Soul of the Everyman on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at artistfirst.com. And now, here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, EveryMan, and I am Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. He certainly is.
And that's the show.
And I'm Margaret.
And you're looking very luminous tonight. Have I mentioned that?
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes. In this season of darkness, because we are in the winter of the northern hemisphere, and it also can be known as the season of light because these days we have a lot of different holidays going on. We're going towards Christmas, and there's people are decorating like mad.
Yep.
I pass this is an anecdote, so I'll frame it that way, but I pass a home on my way driving home from the place where I do my things, where I work. Anyway, I pass this place, and it literally looks like, I think that I could hear their electric meter spinning. It's like there's this high-pitched whine, because it's glowing. It looks like it was nuked, like by, every blessed piece of their lawn and every crenellation and corner and knick-knack, and it's all wrapped in something that's glowing.
Somebody loves Christmas.
Somebody loves Christmas.
Or at least the Christmas lights.
The electric company loves them. Let's put it that way. But tonight we are going to talk, we're going to go a little bit off sort of our beaten path, if you will, because we normally talk about, relationships, and we talk about, how presence comes into your, how you can inculcate presence within your life, how you can, relate to others and to the people around you and all. So we kind of stick in that lane. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit about sort of the fundamentals of existence, which I guess isn't too far off of what we normally do. But we're going a little deeper tonight. We're going to touch the rainbow, so to speak. And rainbow is a good way of putting it because everyone's familiar with that phenomenon. But it's always a little bit magical, because what are you seeing when you see a rainbow? Well, people say, you're seeing the light, breaking up. Yeah, but what you're really seeing is a layer that's below your sort of normal perception of light. So light, we could go very deeply into what light is. It's one of those questions of what's light, and it can go very, very, very deep. We're not going to go that deep. But at a fundamental level, or at a less than fundamental, but a sort of a subtle level, what we call light is a frequency, and in this case, it's a harmonious blend of frequencies, which we perceive when they're all kind of blended together as just brightness, as just a white light. Mm-hmm. But you pass that through a transparent material. In this case, with a rainbow, it's passing through tiny little water droplets that are suspended in the air before or after a rain, or under certain conditions when the upper atmosphere has got ice crystals in it, which is another form of water. The light passes through these water droplets, and something interesting and amazing happens because of the properties of matter when it interacts with light, causes a change or it has an influence on the light. So that in and of itself is sort of interesting. You could put it aside for a moment, but remember it. Matter has an influence on light. Light also has an influence on matter. Whenever you face the sun and you feel warmth on your skin, that's sort of an influence. It's like, everyone says, I just face the sun and it's warm. But, if you think about it for just a second, why? But let's not go there. So this matter allows the light to pass through it because, you can see through a water droplet. But something interesting happens that as that white light, which we see as sort of a brightness, non-dark thing, as it passes through this transparent material, something happens to it. So it sort of bends. Everyone's seen light bend as it moves through a piece of glass or it moves through water. That's why when you look at your hand underwater, it looks a little funny. It's like it's not disconnected. It's sort of disconnected from your body. And all these are strange things, and scientists have spent a long, long time, and I could tell you all about them and are not going to. But because it just, this is not a physics lecture, people, but as it passes through this material, part of the white light, which is, let's call it the redder part, goes a little more slowly through the transparent material. And part of the white light, which is the bluer part, goes a little more quickly through the material. Or I think it's the other way around, actually. In any case, it sort of spreads apart. So the light moves, and because it's going through the material, it kind of bends, and it breaks. We say it's making a rainbow. It's breaking the white light. But it's revealing something very subtle about the light. It's saying, well, wow, all those colors were always there. They're not being manufactured by the rainbow. But yet the energy, the frequency, the influence of this piece of matter, which you can hold in your hand, you can pick up water, you can look at a drop hanging off your fingertip, and if you look through it, you might see a little rainbow. So that's a very, if you just think about it for a second, it's a very curious thing. So we want to generalize that a little bit and just say that, rainbows are special, sort of a special thing, but matter is special too. It's the two things together. A rainbow doesn't just occur. It'd be nice if it kind of did. But if you think about it, the sun would be shining all the time, bright, 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 and then all of a sudden it would just break out in rainbows for no particular reason. It might be a little curious. But when we see a rainbow in the sky and we say, oh, there's a rainbow, it must be raining somewhere, there must be water up there, all these assumptions that we made because there's an influence. Matter has its own interaction with energy, and the way those two things kind of relate to each other is what we're going to talk about a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, white light is that combination of all frequencies. It's all the light. And when you don't have all the light, then you have black. So when you think of it, the interference patterns that we perceive are a reconstitution of all these layers of light. And if you think of light in layers that way, the lower layers being the lower frequencies, and there are lots of lower layers that we don't see.
And lots of upper layers, too.
Yes. But we perceive in a manner that has a reaction from us. In other words, it interacts physically with us, with our bodies, our senses. But what happens if you start playing with the interferences? In other words, everybody thinks of interference patterns as, it's light play. One intersects the other. What happens if that's exactly why we are capable of reaching out and touching another body? Because of the interference pattern that they hold. And then we wind up perceiving the pattern that they are. And in order to do that, what level of light do we have to be at in order that we can interact with one person's interference pattern or our own.
And with the universe at large.
Well, then, yes, you expand out to that universe. But I'm talking about the perception as an individual awareness. To begin to take steps in that direction. It's imaging everything around you in terms of levels of light.
Well, you're jumping, and I don't mind that we're jumping far ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I mean, so the premise that you're kind of expounding upon is that we too. So before we were talking about raindrops and light, in the sun, raindrops in the sun. Neither of those two things, in most people's estimation, have a consciousness to them. This is arguable. I don't want to go into the depths because some people say, "Oh no, everything's conscious," and I wouldn't disagree necessarily. Everything has a presence. Totally would talk all the way through that. But what Margaret's talking about is that that when you perceive the sun or you perceive the rainbow, there's an interaction. You say, "Well, I just see it." Well, but why? Why do you see it? What makes you see it? What is it that's happening that you, a being on a tiny little pebble spinning through infinity, to write a song, get to see something which is, arguably so far away from us? Yeah, I can tell you exactly how far away the sun is from us by current estimation. But it doesn't matter. It certainly isn't in the room with you, right? We know it's not like close. We know it's pretty far away, but yet you can see it. Well, we say, well, that's bright. Of course you can see it. Well, no, there's a whole interaction there. There's a whole physical interaction, a relationship. You can almost say, well, I feel the presence of the sun. And Margaret's going a little further and saying, for the way you do that at a very basic level, is done by perhaps all creatures on the planet can perceive some portion of the presence of the sun, maybe as much as we can, maybe more. But the point is that if you extrapolate that a little bit, you're not a raindrop. You're far more complicated. Well, most of us are. But you're not a raindrop.
Right, a big bag of water is what you is.
You are a big bag of water with attitude, though.
That's
with attitude,
right.
Lots of attitude.
That's the interference pattern.
That's the interference pattern. And you mentioned interference patterns, and we should talk about what those are. But the best way to envision an interference pattern is, again, sort of with water. If you've ever looked through a stream or through a very clear ocean, like a blue, clear tropical ocean, and the sun is shining upon it, you look at the sandy white bottom, and you see all these weird little ripples, and you say, well, that's just the shadow of the water. It is sort of, but it's sort of also like a sort of an interference pattern, because some of them are brighter and some of them are dimmer, and some of them kind of work against each other. And you say, well, the water and the sun and the sand are all coming together, and then all that amazing interaction changes all the light around you, and yet you perceive all of it. You perceive the bright white sun. You perceive the water shining upon the water. You may see a few rainbows flying around if it happens to catch the right way, and then it ripples and interferes, and there's a pattern, and it displays this beautiful pattern. Maybe there's a few fish swimming through it. Now you have this whole thing. It's all flooding into you. You say, well, I'm just seeing it. Yes, but it's flooding into you. It's making you feel good. It's making you think about all kinds of things. It's astounding you with its miraculous beauty. How? All that frequency just from a few rays of sun, some water, and a fish or two, and some sand. One step further is how you interact with others. And that's frequency too. And that's what I mean. You were jumping right to the, but if that's where we want to be, that's a great place to kick off right there. Is that's frequency too.
Well, it's understanding that if you accept the fact that matter is energy, just at a different frequency. It's moving at a much slower rate.
Mm.
And these levels of light, as I'm trying to describe it, are creating a field where we can interact. In other words, the field of physical matter is a field of interaction for us. Whatever's obviously physical to us, we can touch it and say, okay, well, that's soft, or that's hard, that's smooth, it's bumpy, cold, hot, whole bunch of things that come into us experiencing what it means to touch or smell what is around us. And when that becomes, how do I say this? When you do that, you begin to form a base of information on how things interact with you. Again, when we're little, this is how we begin. You're touching, you're tasting, you're
all your senses.
All your senses are going, and then you fall asleep for a long time. And it's because when you really are interacting that way fully, it's exhausting. The things that you're touching, the interference patterns, let's say, getting to know what this thing is, what happens if by exploring what this thing is, you begin to understand what interference pattern it's presenting to you, the way you are interacting with it. Just as when light from the sun is shining on it, it gives you a certain color. Why? Because it's absorbing a whole bunch of different light colors and just emitting one or a few.
Less of them, but it blends together. But if you see a pure color, yeah, just one.
And it's fascinating when you think of it that way. Because you're like, well, wait a minute. If it's actually absorbing the light that's hitting it, which is supposed to be white light, and it's emitting this particular color, it means all that other stuff is being absorbed by it.
I mean, the world of color is, we could go into that. But I want to go back to what you were saying before, because I think there's something very subtle that we take for granted all the time. And you just said it. You touch something, and you feel it. It feels soft, or it feels hard, or whatever. It feels cold. Something which is well known to anyone who's studied this field, but yet most people take for granted, is that when you put your hand upon something, it doesn't go through it. Right. So if you say, well, if you were a ghost or something made of purely of energy, wouldn't it just go right through? Because everything's just energy. But very solid scientific fact backs this up. So just take it on we could go into it in great detail. You don't want to hear it, believe me. But take it on absolute fact that the actual thing you perceive as matter, which Margaret mentioned is truly just, let's say, very low frequency energy, or very low, of a certain state of energy, which we call matter, is essentially empty space. Now, you all know people who are essentially empty space. But I want to tell you that everything that you touch, everything that you stand upon, the earth itself, with all of its mass and all of its gravity, and every piece of matter is essentially indistinguishable almost from empty space. What makes it distinguishable from completely empty space is the hidden energy, the frequencies which are within you, within all of us. But let's just talk about you. You are made of matter, but matter is basically empty space with energy fields, very tightly coupled energy fields. So your finger, just to look at your finger, or your fingernail looks pretty solid, and you can touch it, and you can touch it with the other finger, and you can rub it a bit, put nail polish on it. But at the end of the day, if I were to tell you that that's basically not an illusion, but the reason your finger can touch your other finger and not just go straight through, because it's mostly empty space, is because of the energy that is contained within your matter. You, every piece of you, contains this energy, repels other pieces of matter. And the force that you feel, or the pressure that you feel when you press your foot on the floor or push on the table, is the two pieces of matter, one conscious and alive and you, and one, perhaps a piece of wood, which totally would argue has a presence and all that, but let's just say it's not conscious. Those two things push against each other because they're two empty spaces. The energies don't want to mix. It's the only thing keeping you from falling through the floor, or in fact,
through the earth,
or, and this is kind of a wild concept, it's the only thing keeping the whole universe from just being let's say, an infinitesimally small dot, which is what they say was the beginning of the universe, a infinitely small, incredibly dense something, really was energy. So when you push upon the table and you move away, or you step on the floor and you don't fall through, it's because your energy and that energy push against each other. And yes, the physical is there. You hit your hand on the table, it hurts. But every other piece of energy, your full consciousness, your perception, everything that you're using to perceive the table or the rest of the universe, the consciousness, which is you, inhabits a bunch of energy fields. I mean, that's really what you are. You're a being. You're ensouled within flesh, spirit ensouled within flesh, because that's the way we say it. But it's just you've come from a very high energy frequency, which is source. You've ensouled, you've separated for a period of time to be experiential, and incarnated within a bunch of energy fields. But your essence and everything that is you, and everything that you talk about, and everything that bothers you, and the desk and the chair and every other blessed piece of the universe, is just frequency, vibration, energy at different states. Every piece of it is. And this isn't my philosophical opinion. This is the hardest of hard science, that if somebody showed you the formula, you'd run away screaming. I know I would. But it's so true that it seems impossible. But yet, it's the truth beyond all believing, because it doesn't require belief, it's just the truth. And if we were to go even a little bit deeper, it gets even weirder, because once you go to quantum, it starts to even get weirder. But let's just say that we're all energy.
Yeah, now quantum, once you step into the realm of quantum, then every sci-fi story, every outlandish thought, every religious ritual that you come up with begins to correlate with something else.
Right.
So I want to go back a sec to this understanding of what matter is. Because I remember being taught this in grammar school, where they're saying, well, you got your 3 states of matter, solid, liquid, and gas.
Mm.
And then they started talking about what the differences were. And when they talk about gas, it's just molecules that have been expanded into this state.
Mm-hmm.
Then liquid being molecules coming together and rolling along as a fluid. And then matter was when they started crystallizing and forming structures.
Right. Solid was
Right.
sort of harder stuff.
Right. And we were all very busily writing it down.
Yes, it's just solid, liquid. Drawing pictures of all of...
Well, they were trying, and we were fascinated by it. We were grammar school at the time, It's like, hey, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then they started introducing, this is later on, the idea that what an atom is.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the atoms that we were talking about. In the liquid state, they were atoms that basically were flowing around each other, and then the solid is crystallized into a geometric.
Okay.
So what is an atom? And, they gave you the typical, okay, this is a nucleus, made another circle around that, and said this is the orbit of an electron. Okay. Okay. So then their next step is, of course, elements, and showing you what the structures were of molecules. And then introducing the elements on how they attach to each other.
Right.
Okay. And you're sitting here and you're going, how big is an atom really? Because they made this little dot, and in your head you're like, oh, so that's you're thinking that's the proportion.
Right.
This dot that looked like a ping pong ball on the board, and then the circle that was,
maybe a beach ball around the ping pong.
Size of right.
Right.
And you're thinking, oh,
that seems reasonable.
Then you learn no. This nucleus is this big, maybe a ping pong ball size, but the electron is super small. And it's way the heck out of there.
Right. I mean, one of the things that, if you think about just with the model that Margaret's talking about, the distance between that little ping pong ball, which is the center, and the electron, whatever it is, let's say we only have one. If the center is right where you are, the electron is in the next county, like it's 10 miles away.
Way out there.
Way far away. And you say to yourself, what's in between those two? And I say to you, nothing.
Well, space is what they told you.
Space.
It's just space in between.
Now, we could talk about what's really in between those two, but in fact, nothing is a good description.
And then they introduced you to how these atoms are linking up to another atom to form substances.
Right.
And at that point, you're like, well, they're sharing electrons when these things are put together as a compound of some kind. They're sharing electrons.
Right.
Sharing electrons. Okay. So they make this thing, and these electrons, most of us are thinking, you think of water, H2O.
Right.
You get that little bend in the two hydrogen bonds and the oxygen, and you think, they're tiny little molecules rolling around, right? More complex than that.
Way more complex.
Much more complex. But even if you think of it that way, there is so much space in between these atoms. It's mostly space. If you did percentages of what is mass to what is space, or what it's actually taking up in space, was it less than 1%?
Yeah, way less.
I mean, at that point, they're not supposed to exist.
Right.
It doesn't exist. If it's 99% not there, it's not real.
So what is the real? I mean, because you say, well, I can't put my hand through the table, and I can splash water, and I can push air around. So there's something that's happening that makes it, quote unquote, real. And that happening is that your energy fields and its energy fields. Go ahead.
Okay. The next step, you talk about jumping ahead,
Yeah.
is the fact that you begin to learn that electrons move in fields and shells.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's not just this orbit that's happening. These are cloud fields that are somehow moving somewhere.
Right.
And you can't measure them and detect where they happen to be in one spot at the same time. You either can measure what the charge is or their location. You cannot do both.
Right.
So it's a cloud that's buzzing around these certain set point nuclei forming something.
Right.
Now, if you look at all that and you go, those could be interference patterns. Those could be, this is the way these elements have bonded together. We say that. But it's like, this is how their relationship is. This is the relationship pattern to make this element.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, wait a minute. That's that particular element. Calcium, let's say. Well, what does that make my human body? Because we're made up of all kinds of minerals, calcium.
Mm-hmm.
We're made up of water. We're made up of... But it's put together a certain way. It's not just this mishmash.
Right. It's very structured.
Exceedingly structured. But we're all 99% space. Wait a minute.
Right.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine.
Well, this is what I mean. You have to stop right there and kind of think about it for a second.
Mm-hmm.
That means we really don't exist.
Or we do. I mean, we obviously do exist.
Okay.
But the way we perceive existence is very different from what we actually are existing as.
You want me to continue?
Yeah, please. I'm sorry.
Okay. My point being, you are less than 1% of what appears to be space around you. So what do you look at? The space that's around you or the 1%? Because if you focus on either, you are much less than the whole. It is that wholeness that allows for you to maintain a point of consciousness within everything that you are interacting with, all the fields of interaction that you happen to engage in. Where do you choose to focus? Because that means that your consciousness is key in what you are experiencing. And when you begin to embrace the idea that there is so much more out there than you could possibly imagine, because we say it's space. What if it's pure potential? What if this is the space in which you can choose where your interactions are? Instead of saying, well, it's nothing.
Right. It gets so deep so quickly that oftentimes people just kind of run away from it quickly. But your insight is exactly correct. you can go into all the details, and you and I know far too many of them. But your insight is exactly correct. That the focus. Okay. Yes, the universe exists, and we don't want to go into why. But your consciousness is quite different from the universe, and you kind of know that, sort of, de novo. You know you're not a chair. You know that you're something different. You're a being, and your pets are not chairs. They have a certain presence. They have a certain beinghood to them, and part of the reason that you exist, and Margaret, I think, is more correct. The essential reason that you exist is your focus, your consciousness, your beinghood is what makes you alive, right? I mean, when a person is born, when they're conceived, their consciousness is embodied within this matter, and this also energy, almost nothing. But their focus and their consciousness, as they are born and they grow and they perceive and they gather more and more experience, all of it gets written on something. Your memories, your beautiful appreciation of a rainbow, your ability to interact with another, to have a relationship with them at a conscious level. You're not just touching people all the time. You have an energetic relationship with them because of your focus. That's, again, everything. People take all of this for granted. Of course, you just look at somebody, right, and you know what they're thinking. Yeah, you do, but how? You look at somebody without a word. And this is always true with infants, with the wordless relationship, looking into the eyes of a newborn, and you know that there's a presence there. How do you know? Going beyond all you're picking it up and your hands aren't going through it, and it's 99% and you're 1% something and most 99% space. Yeah, all that great. Da 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 da. When you look into the soul, to the ensouled spirit of this being, this brand new newborn being, and you immediately, instantly feel their presence. Oh. Well, that's it. That's the key. That's the MacGuffin of the whole thing, is that it's energy, it's focus, it's frequency. You're able to perceive them. And it's not just touching them. You can just perceive them. You say, well, I feel you. Yeah, you do. But did you ever think of what an incredible miracle that is? That you feel somebody? You know when someone's mad at you, or someone loves you, or somebody's, whatever. You put a word, which is just nothing more than another piece of frequency, out into the universe, and it's heard by another, or a note of a song, or whatever. And you feel their presence coming back to you somehow. You do, right? I mean, you also obviously do. That's how the whole world works, is we feel the presence of others. Kind of a miracle.
Yeah. What you're asking then is, how is consciousness perceiving other consciousness?
Yeah. And you do.
Right. It's not saying that, well, some people don't. Some people pretty much don't think that way. But consciousness, being aware of itself, I believe, is the first step.
Even better, yeah.
It's not just, well, feed me, or I'm cold, but you being aware of you and what you are thinking and feeling and perceiving in that moment. That is the first step. But to begin to extend outside of you so that you can become aware of, wait a minute, There's another being over there. And we can interact with each other. We can talk. We can rave. We can wait. All that within this field of interaction, what you choose to be in contact with. And that's how we all begin to enter, but we promptly forget because what we have chosen teaches us the expected, what would be the word, the expected responses, the expected interactions that we have with the things around us.
Right.
Thinking, okay, well, gee, that's solid. This
Right.
is matter. That's solid. Okay. And in your mind, you classify all of that. But when it's in relationship with another person, another living person, it's very different because it's not just the sensory that you're responding to, the touch, the feel, the color. It is the words, the communication that goes between the two of you. It becomes ideas, exchange, mind to mind. It becomes emotions that are shared, communicated and shared. And of course, as time goes on, things develop, different emotions, different situations, etc. But thinking of those as field patterns of emotions between two people, patterns of mind, concepts that are shared and built on. They say you're on a project with someone, and you build one upon the other. Emotions, again, as time goes on, different layers of interaction. Just as when you're in this physical world, you begin to build. You may build a home. You may add on to the home. You may grow a garden. You may participate in bringing children into the world. All realms of interaction. And what is the purpose of this? But to experience soul to soul and the different levels of soul to soul interaction. So those interference patterns, if you want to call it that, they're vital. They are, what would be the word? These are patterns and concepts that our soul uses to begin to truly learn what it means to be in an interaction with living beings around us, as well as what matter is around us. If you think of matter as a baseline, you can begin to apply that to higher levels of energy. Would be a good example. In other words, your physicality, you know that you can't just sit in water and expect the water to support you. You just get wet. But if you sit on a stone, that will support you. Understanding where the limits are and how it applies. So if you're in a relationship and you're dealing with someone who is immovable. They don't want to do it. What's the best way to handle that? Just allow it to sit until it begins to flow, because it will eventually begin to flow. And then maybe there will be an interaction. But if someone has a barrier up, a shield up, so that they're hard, you can't get through. But you can be present.
So I just want to, that's perfect. It's a perfect analogy, because the physicality becomes an analog, and one could say it's an analog even in either direction. The physicality of a stone versus water, or of a relationship which is hard versus a one that flows, is the same pattern. You know, there's certain resonances and patterns that we see throughout the physical world.
Yes.
And those same resonances and patterns occur throughout the universe at all energy levels and at all perception levels. So to say that this relationship is now frozen like ice. We saw it. We say that this person's being cold to me. Well, I mean, we're using a physicality analog. You know, you know that their temperature is 98.6, and so is yours. Nobody's cold, but you say, well, you're giving me the cold shoulder, or you're really hot right now, because that's the energy vibe of, let's say, anger or some other sort of intense emotion. So we use this physicality resonances of hot and cold and stony and flowing, and we see their same patterns in the presence to presence interactions. So the experiential levels, Margaret started at the base level of just matter. You're just you know, this hot, this cold, this hard, this soft. But then you go up a level, and you have maybe that same sort of thing in emotion. Or you come up a level or a different level and just say you can see that same sort of patterns in thought. This is a thought which flies. This is a thought which is bogged down and muddy. We say this is a muddy thought. Well, there's no mud. There's nothing wet or mucky. But yet the thought isn't clear. You say, oh, this is a clear thought. This is a thought that soars. This is a thought which encompasses, you know, an incredible theory about the universe. Well, you could say that, and it would be true, because those resonances, which we relate back to the base, because that's what we learned first, occur at all levels. Even the unconscious level has a certain frequency to it. And when you go up and up and up, higher and higher, we say, you know, if you talk about it from the Buddhist or from many other disciplines, that you go up these levels, and you say, well, what are these levels? We have chakras, we have all these. You're going up levels, but the patterns remain very similar. In fact, they're the same. Each level is an analog. You see that it doesn't matter where you are at the levels of the universe. It's all has same patterns. Why? Because it's actually all the same thing. It's all energy from the lowest frequency to the highest that we can perceive, from the base chakra to the 12th chakra, however far you want to go. We say these things because this is how our universe works. It has levels, it has frequencies, it has relationships and resonances at everywhere you look, and however low or high you look. So that says, what's the pattern here? It's all the same thing with just different aspects of the same thing. You know, it's not ping pong balls and rubber bands. in the atom. But you can think about it that way, and then you can think about the resonances in it, and it sort of works. Why? Because it is the same thing.
Well, what the mind is doing is recognizing patterns,
Yeah.
which is something that human beings do as part of their humanity, almost.
Yeah, your beinghood.
You recognize patterns, which is an amazing thing when you think of it. Not everything recognizes patterns. And that particular gift allows us to notice the things that are happening around us. I mean, science in general is based on observation and the ability to get the same result over and over again, and to extrapolate into what the universal law is. But that is because of a recognition of the pattern that it sees, repetitive. And when you realize that that is something that does not change, you begin to realize that there are things around us that are foundational to this creation, this universe. So, of course, what are they? And that's that pursuit of what science is, to understand in the best way we possibly can what is creation, what is this. So what is this? So,
may I say one thing, though?
Sure.
Because I think the thing you said earlier really comes in perfectly here. The actual fundamental thing in the entire universe is focus. Is where you perceive your focus actually in an incorrect way creates the universe, but it does.
Right.
And every portion of the universe, from its beginning till now, and every moment of now, focus is what creates the past, what creates what has happened, what creates the moment of now. And those patterns, that fundamental pattern, gets reflected throughout the whole universe and all the things that we look at. But it is, Margaret said earlier, it really is focus. It's what you're looking at.
Well, if you think of it in terms of, every person has something that they like to focus on. It's usually the thing that you respond to easily. It comes to you very easily, or you interact with it, a concept or a talent or a pattern. But when you actually interact with that particular focus, it winds up being very similar to someone else's focus. Like someone is an amazing creative painter, and the images that they put on to the canvas suddenly is evoking something deep within you. Your soul responds. But then when you see a sculpture, again, it hits a certain harmonic in you. And the same thing can happen with mathematical equations, where the interpretation of that, it's at another level. And I'm going to go back to that concept of the hologram, the holographic universe. If you take a hologram that's been created and you break it apart, each little piece contains the exact same form. So your focus is realizing the greater form through the piece of your brokenness. And that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Your brokenness is the key in which you can walk through and begin to understand the whole creation.
Right. Your piece of source, which is your being, contains source.
Right. And
you are an emanation, but you're also source. You're also always source.
Right. And I believe that's why us going through our suffering down here is that breaking apart and understanding that within that peace is your answer. In your brokenness is the answer. The door is right there.
Right.
And you can touch into the spirit, the consciousness of who you actually are. And it might be the only way you're going to reach it.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think we've reached something else, too.
Yes, we have reached the end of our hour.
It was a luminous hour.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.